Be sure and tell them Large Marge sent ya.
In the 90s, we were just teeny tykes. We went to movies and our bikes. We wanted to be DJs, but we were just teeny gals. So we went off to college and we remained best pals. 20 years later, we're still watching flicks and we're bringing you the favorite bit by bit. Sweetie and Sweetie are here to say it's the Large Marge Santa's podcast. Hey,
Hey guys, welcome to the Large Marge Santa's podcast, your favorite podcast where two sweetie sisters talk about movies that shaped their childhood. I'm Sweetie with an IE.
And I'm Sweetie with a Y.
Today we traveled back to 1984 and decided to do this romantic comedy that was a favorite of Carol's back in the day. So there's like a good handful, maybe more, of movies that were real favorites of Carol. You know, we talk a lot about our dad being so influential in the movies that he showed us and became ones that we loved, but can't forget Carol in this whole equation, because there were several movies that Carol, we would watch with her, and just, I remember just seeing her reactions to them, just like made me so happy. And our mom is like the best laugh ever. And not that she didn't like laugh a lot, but you know, she was a mom with 3 kids. So there wasn't a lot to laugh about. It was really hard. And so when we did hear her laugh, it was just so nice. So watching these movies, I remember was just, I just like imprinted on my brain. And one of them happened to be Romancing the Stone. Weird title, never really caught on.
I still don't really get it.
In the trivia it said that is a jeweler's process as it gets a stone ready to be like put into jewelry. You might have like a rough stone and then you have to romance it. So you have to like treat it and shine it up and
romancing Joan to get the stone.
Yeah, right. So
like they didn't even care about that much. It was like one stone.
I know. It was so double entendre, but that's what that means. I always thought that was just like a weird, I don't know, it didn't make sense to me, but I hope it does make sense now. So from 1984, this movie stars Kathleen Turner. Love that bitch.
Love her voice. Jessica Rabbit, obviously. Yeah. That's all I can hear when she's in a movie is just Jessica.
Yeah.
Jessica
Rabbit. I don't know too much other things that she did. She's a big star of the time.
Weren't her and Michael Douglas in War of the Roses? Wasn't that like their big movie?
Okay, that was the big one. Here's what I remember growing up when she was in that movie Serial Mom. Remember that?
Yeah, good one.
That was kind of
crazy. Was she in a Streetcar? No. Streetcar Named Desire? No.
I don't know.
Well, you know, she did a play with my friend Jillian's now husband, I think, unless that was her previous boyfriend. But she stayed at her house with them in Brewster, and so I have some stories. But
she's fabulous. She was huge in this time, so like in the 80s and stuff. So you have Kathleen Turner, Michael Douglas, who was really instrumental in getting this movie made. So apparently there's a lot of comparisons between this movie and Raiders of the Lost Ark. So riding that like wave of adventure movies. And people have to remember or like to say that this movie was actually written in 1979, but it took 4 or 5 years for it to actually get made. So it actually was written before George Lucas wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark, I guess.
Makes sense.
So really, it's not like a rip-off at all. It just like followed that same kind of thing.
Body Heat and Peggy Sue Got Married were the other two big ones.
Good one. Also, you have Danny DeVito, who was roommates with Michael Douglas at one point. I read.
What?
Cool. What a fun party that would be.
But was that like before they were famous?
Yeah, I think so.
Or
like up and comings.
That's just, but like, what are you hear those stories all the time, and it's like, what are the odds that both you and your roommate became super famous actors?
Tommy Lee Jones?
Yeah, there's
Al
like
Gore?
all these weird, there's like so many weird ones, and it's like, I mean, there's still time for me and Izzy to make it big, but like, I just don't, it's
Michael
not
Douglas,
fair.
like, was he always famous because his dad was, right? I mean, is he basically like a Sheen?
Well, he's a Nepo baby.
Yeah, he's a Nepo baby, so like, he just riding the coattails of good old Kirk, but yeah, so that's interesting. Dan DeVito, always hilarious. Whenever I see him in a movie, I'm always like, dude, man, that guy's short.
I always have to look it up.
He's
I'm
like a
wait,
baby.
let me look it up again.
He's a tiny child.
He's like 4'11".
Hysterically funny. So great. You have Mary Ellen Trainor in this movie.
God.
So our favorite mom of the 80s.
Our favorite character actor.
Character
4'9" 3/4. That's
He
how
is
tall
a
Danny DeVito
bitty
is.
baby.
Yeah, at one point we thought that, what's her name? Mary
Ellen Trainor.
was probably our most used cameo, like our person who had the most cameos, not like starring actor, but repeat for cameos. She's in so many random movies.
And like we said, most of them is a mom character, but I like in this one, she didn't play a mom character. She was like the sister and sort of the sister who like got in trouble and had like a little sassy like life down in Colombia there. And then Holland Taylor as the publisher or book agent or whatever.
Was she just in something we just watched? I feel like we were like, Holland Taylor? I don't know.
But yeah, so great. Directed by, which I did not realize until the credit rolled and it said this, Robert Zemeckis. What?
Bobby
the
Z.
hey?
Bobby
So
Z.
kind of interesting way he found himself to this movie. So I didn't remember this, and I should have because we did Cocoon already, but he was fired from directing that, remember?
Yes.
So he was fired from directing Cocoon, and then Ron Howard ended up taking over.
Why was he fired?
I wasn't doing a good
Too
job, I
good?
guess, or something. Yeah.
Whatever.
So then he was able to do this movie, or what? Or does it have to do with how bad this movie was, and then he was fired from Cocoon? Maybe that's what it was.
This movie was bad?
So the original take that they had of this when they first wrapped was really terrible and did really bad with test audiences. So it was considered to be a failure. And I think he was working on Cocoon at that time. And then they were like, you screwed this other movie up. You can't do Cocoon.
That's not fair.
I think that's what they did.
Awful.
So then he did a bunch of rewrites, changed the story, did some reshoots, whatever. And everyone loved it. And it did become like a pretty big success. And it was because of the success of this movie, he was able to direct Back to the Future.
Good.
So without romancing the stone, guys, we wouldn't have had Back to the
Walk
Future.
before you can run. You know, I
Think
always
about it.
confuse this movie with True Romance, which like
Totally different.
people talk about as like an amazing, I think it was one of Quentin Tarantino's like first scripts or whatever. And so I was always so confused because I was like, why did Quentin Tarantino write a romance movie? But then I'm like, wait, no, different movie. So confusing. Sorry.
Directed by Diane Thomas. Written by Diane Thomas. So woman wrote this story. Great.
Woo.
But tragic end to that woman's life. So Michael Douglas bought her this like fancy car because he found this script. I don't know where like he found it, but he ended up making the movie. He was one of the producers, and he gifted her this like beautiful car. And she was going for a ride with her boyfriend in it one day. The boyfriend was driving. They got into a car accident, and she died.
No.
I know.
God.
So
Awful.
freaking sad. So we could have had other like great romantic comedy scripts from her, and not meant to be.
Way to go,
So
Michael.
Shout out Diane Thomas.
Getting dangerous cars for people.
Yeah,
Just
great
kidding.
movie.
It's not your fault. You're fine.
So that's kind of all the peeps who were involved. As I said, like, just remember real great moments. I remember some really key scenes in this, as a child that really stuck with me, and we'll go over them. But pleasantly surprised that for me, this movie held up. Excellent.
Big fan over here. Big fan, sweetie.
So such a good movie. I was so happy at the end. And I've come to realize that all these movies that were my mom's favorites and she was showing to me, I was about, I'm her age that she was when she was showing these movies, and that she loved them so much.
Spooky.
She would have been in her mid to late 30s. So that is kind of funny, and how I'm all like now, like, oh my God, these movies are so great, because they're these kind of like, well, I mean, a big theme of them, and for movies in the 80s directed towards that age group of women does seem to be this kind of escapism movies where it's like they're not really happy with their life, and so then they get involved in some kind of plot, and then that changes them and like their their lease on life, and they just kind of are reborn. And that's kind of the theme with a lot of these, like Desperately Seeking Susan. We just did that one. That was a Carol favorite,
Right.
Bored housewife. She finds this like exciting new life through this woman. Baby Boom, wanted to quit her job and be a mom and live in fucking Vermont.
Vermont.
And then this one we'll go into, seemingly boring woman, kind of scared to do anything outside of her apartment. And then she gets thrown into a situation where she has to, and boom, She's an adventure gal.
Burr, burr, burr.
So yeah, so I just think that was kind of like what was geared and showed to women, and now I kind of get it now. Not that I like don't like my life, but it's just like this phase of yourself as a woman.
Apparently,
Right?
good.
Yeah.
I never really saw this. I think I tried to watch it once back in the day, but it didn't resonate with me. Definitely, I mean, resonates with me more now, but I did, like, I kind of zoned out in the, like, last, like, third of the movie. I was just kind of like, I'm over this stone. Like, I don't care about this stone. It was, like, not that impressive. It was probably worth a lot of money, but at the end of the day, I was just like, let's get out of this jungle. I mean, too much work, right? It's there's a lot going on.
Whack on in the jungle.
But a lot of funny moments, and yeah, I had a mostly good time. You know, it's fun to see. I almost said Kirk, but Michael Douglas is like a young pup. Still not attracted to him. Sweetie decided she was attracted to him. And I mean, he's just like he's just ratty to me.
He's a little rat pack.
He looks like a rat.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it. I appreciate him. You know?
Yeah.
You know?
You know.
And that's all I have to say about that.
All right, let's get into it. It's time for the Sweetie synopsis. Yeah, sweeties. Those were Italian. Now they're practical. Key scene. Look at those chompers.
Wow. A 2-for-1.
I know.
Twofer.
I could have written down 10 more quotes.
That's crazy.
It's a quotable film.
All right,
Okay.
You want to do the synopsis?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll
Sweetie's going to take a stab since I
take a
zoned
stab.
out.
Okay, so Joan Wilder is a romance novelist living in the big Manhattan in the mid-1980s. She is just wrapping up her latest novel. And, you know, romance novel being bodice rippers, I think another word for those. The kind of covers that Fabio used to model for, where there was a big beefy guy with his shirt open and he would be like
windswept
holding the
hair,
woman and caressing her
open, and like
open
her dress is
shirt.
open.
Yeah.
And it's like
This whole thing. You've seen him. So she's a big romance novelist, and she just finished her latest book, wraps it up, has a collection of mini bar bottles of liquor. Did you notice that? I'm
I
like,
guess
is that
she's
'cause
just
she
a drunk?
travels? Is she a drunk? And takes one of those out, feeds her little cat, whose name is Romeo, and it congratulates herself on her latest book, but also is like a little bit melancholy about it, I think. Happy that she finished, but you can tell like there's a bit of a loneliness to her celebration. You know, she's all about romance, but kind of like, where's her romance, right?
But she's
Stamp
holding out.
cat lady.
Yeah, she seems to be holding out for this ideal man that she's kind of made up in her stories, right? So I forget what the guy's name, her like leading man is, but it's basically that's what she's looking for. And her editor, who's like this cool older woman, I mean, maybe she wasn't old when this movie. She always seems old.
Everyone seems old.
What's her name?
Holland Taylor.
Holland Taylor. She's like, you got to give that up. Like, it's not going to happen. It's not realistic. And she's like, it's going to happen, obviously, whatever. Yeah. And then one day.
So as she was leaving her apartment, she gets a package in the mail. And some like neighbor brought it, like didn't fit in the box. So she takes it with her. And when she comes home, she finds her apartment ransacked. And then the phone rings, and it's her sister. So the only thing you know about her sister, they like pan over some family photos, and it's like her and her sister and her husband, who looks sort of like a Hispanic dude. And you come to find out that her sister lives in Colombia with her husband Eduardo, and Elaine is her husband's name.
Her husband's name?
Elaine
is her husband's name?
Sister's name. Sorry. Elaine.
But Eduardo was murdered recently,
yes.
and she kind of like glosses over it in like conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, that thing that happened, he got murdered. And I was like, what? Like,
and his body parts were found, or he was never only some of his body was found. He was dismembered somehow.
God forbid anything happened to Sweet Eye Jimmy. But if Jimmy was murdered, I would freak out. Like maybe they're not very close as siblings, and her sister lives in Colombia, but like what? But
her sister's still living in Colombia. So anyway, you come to find out, and I guess the scene before this, the sister is trying to leave the country, I think, and she has this like hot car, and she's like getting ready to go, and this child does this crazy boomerang something thing that like swoops, like he throws it and it gets her around the neck and she literally falls into like her Corvette, and this 10-year-old boy jumps into it and drives her away and basically kidnaps her.
Yep.
So she's like on this boat with these sketchy guys, and they're asking about this map that her husband had. So come to find out, these guys are like dealers in antiquities, so like old, obviously like gemstones and artifacts and stuff like that. And clearly her husband had some connection to a hidden artifact in this map, and they want that map. So she knows, I guess, that he had sent it to Joan in New York. And so she calls her and says, Joan, like, you got to bring that map to me in Colombia. There's people here who are going to hurt me if you don't bring it down. And Joan is, you know, not like a shut-in, but she has her life in New York and doesn't really do anything except write. Like, she has this big imagination about what the world is like and all that, and writes these books, but she's never actually done it, right?
Yeah, but you don't get like a strong backstory of why necessarily. Like, is she afraid of flying? It seems like she definitely gets car sick is like one thing that like trips her up. But other than that, like maybe, they don't really expand on that. I think she's just like not a traveler. And
she's kind of severe looking, I guess I'll use that word, the way they kind of costume her in the beginning. Her hair is always like in a bun and back. She wears like suits and sort of conservative outfits, no makeup really. She's just kind of a plain Jane. So, but with her sister in trouble, she's like, I gotta go to Colombia. So next scene, she's arrived in Colombia, wearing her best travel suit.
Oh my God, full suit,
a winter jacket and a suitcase,
high heels, suit, a hat, like the whole thing.
Obviously didn't check in, like, where am I going, what Colombia is like. I mean, the Colombia, as this movie portrays it, is basically a muddy jungle.
It's portrayed as very third world.
Yeah. Which I think it was and might still be some parts of it. I mean, not the city where she was going, but like where she ended up in the country, which I guess she wasn't supposed to go to. So yeah, she wasn't really supposed to go to the jungle. She took the wrong bus. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, first thing that happens, wrong bus. And the bad guys are watching her. The Danny DeVito character is like the goon of like the main.
Well, there's
or
two
they're
bad
brothers.
guys
Are they
watching her,
brothers?
right?
They're brothers.
Cousins. Ira. My mother's yours.
So they're like watching her, and unfortunately they see her like get on the wrong bus. But then there's also this other shady character who is with her who gets on the same bus as she, because he's also like following her. So you're like, why are these two people following her? I don't know. But anyways, she gets on the wrong bus and then figures out that she's going the total wrong way, tries to get the bus driver to like stop and let her out or something. And, she causes him to be distracted, and then they crash. And then the buses crash, and then they're fucked. And then everyone else starts walking away. And then this weird, shady character is like, don't worry, miss. Another bus will be coming. Like, it's a schedule, as if it was just like a normal, metropolitan bus route.
And they're in like the mountains of Colombia. I mean, it is like a rainforest jungle.
The jungle.
She was supposed to go to Cartagena, which was like, the bigger city, but she went literally the opposite direction into the mountains.
Bad break. So once everyone else is gone, this shady figure pulls a gun on her and is asking for the map, so he also knows about the map, okay? And then meanwhile, how did I describe it? A mysterious hottie in the jungle is like, looks very Indiana Jones-ish with his like hat and kind of like in silhouette, right? And sees this woman like kind of in trouble and gets shot at. She calls to him, was like, help! And then this shady guy like shoots him, and then ruckus ensues, fighting, yada yada yada. Is that when they fall down? No.
So he like chases that guy away because he ends up having a rifle, and that other guy only has like a pistol. So he goes away, and he actually had birds on that bus. He was in like rare bird dealings or something like that. So he lost a ton of money when that the thing crashed, and she tells him kind of it was like her fault, but she's like, I need to get to Cartagena, like, can you help me? And they make this deal to she's going to give him $400 or something in traveler's checks if he brings her to Cartagena. So he's like, okay, I just lost all these birds, like I need to get some money. And he's kind of seems like, you know, nice guy, but obviously in it for the money. Drifter. Yeah. What is he doing there? He's an American in South America. Like, we don't know. But it's a done deal, and they begin marching off into the jungle. So, like we said, she's incredibly not dressed correctly. Can you imagine walking through like muddy streets? I mean, and then it starts raining. So then it's like mud everywhere, crazy jungle. She's in pumps and, like I said, like a winter puffy coat and carrying a suitcase. So at one point he's like, you got anything valuable in that suitcase? And she's like, oh, just like my clothes and stuff. And he just like chucks it out like off of the cliff because it was wasting so much time. She's like dragging the suitcase. He won't help her. And then as they're sitting there talking, like this mudslide just comes and she gets whisked down this cliff. I mean, should have been dead, let me tell you. There was like, if you crash into a tree at that speed going down like a mudslide, like you would be dead. Covered in mud. She falls in this big puddle, and then he comes down right after and literally like falls into her lap with his head like in her crotch. And she's just kind of freaking out.
So now they're even further away from their destination and muddy and lost and whatever. Okay, so I have a discovery is that when this part like right before that mudslide happened, I was thinking, oh my God, Michael Douglas looks exactly like the guy in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Russell. And then all of a sudden he puts on this like red fucking vest. And I was like, oh my God, it's Russell. I was like, is this Russell grown up? And he's like gone into the jungle. And then this mudslide happens, which is basically the exact same scene in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, like with the rain slide. And then it's like basically if something clicks, I'm like, oh my God, this is the same fucking movie. It's just like instead of being shrunken down, they're lost in the Colombian jungle and have to find their way home, right? So it's like you're put out, you're like a fish out of water, you're out of your element.
My favorite
you don't have anything that you need.
Right.
And so I just thought it was so funny. So I was like, what if this is like Russell's like adult story of like, this is what happened to Russell. He became Michael Douglas. Whoa. That's my theory. I don't know. Cool. But yeah, that part was crazy.
Yep. So then the kind of creepy guy who had initially held her up at the bus comes back and is after them. And he brings like this police squad and stuff like that. Well, he's
the secret police in Colombia. His name's Zolo. Yeah. Which like, so yeah, secret police is definitely like something that gets brought up a lot. Maybe in the 80s, 90s. I don't know. I feel like that was a big like buzzword back then. But it's basically just like a lawless like bullshit law,
right? Because they're like there is a police force that he does get in touch with, but then he has like his own private one, and he's like a general in this like other private one that kind of runs the country. Anyway, so clearly like they're after the map too. So they're kind of fending them off as he comes like with more guys and more guns, and they have to like cross this stream. There's like a bridge that's kind of sketchy. Ends up swinging over with vines, and then they're able to escape the police officers shooting at them, and then find this abandoned or a plane, a cargo plane that had crashed.
A Lego piece.
A cargo plane that crashed carrying marijuana. So that comes in handy. So they have some shelter for the night, and they get to burn marijuana, and they find a bottle of tequila and get drunk and high in the airplane. Yeah, pretty fun.
And they bond.
And they get to know each other. And it's kind of had been shady about why she was there. I need to save my sister. She's in trouble. And that's like all the information that she would give him. I think kind of knowing if she told him about a treasure map and stuff, like he seems like that kind of person who'd be like, oh, give me that map. We'll come to find out. I don't know if
she was smart, if she would have thought of that. I don't know. I feel like she was pretty naive from like the get-go.
So she does end up like she's a little drunk and high and ends up confessing why she's there. And there's this map, and he's kind of like kind of getting into her head that maybe they should look for the treasure, but because then she'd have a bargaining chip to get her sister back, but she's not like, no, I want to save my sister. I want to save my sister. So nothing funny happens in the plane. No, like, sexual things, but stuff, I guess, is a brewing. So they leave the plane and then are moving on, and then they come up on the village,
and then
where they meet the guy.
Oh God, what guy? Oh yeah. So they need a car, right? And they come to this place, and there's like these kind of like bad, like rough guys. And Jack, have we mentioned his name is Jack? Michael Douglas's character, Jack T. Colton. The T stands for trustworthy. But yeah, these rough guys come, and Jack is like, we go to like, he's about to grab his gun and start something basically, and Joan is like, excuse me, fellas, like playing to like her naivety of like, I don't like, we need a car, like blah, 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 like just being nice or whatever. And the guys are like, oh yeah, we know where a car is, like we'll take you, like whatever. Or it's the guy in town. So he's this like drug lord, I guess, this guy who has the car. And they knock on his door, like not expecting a lot. And basically he's like, get the fuck off my property. But then he sees Joan, and he's like, Joan?
No, Jack calls her like, how are you going to write us out of this one? Joan Wilder.
Oh, yeah.
And in the beginning, her publisher did say that her books are really big in Colombia, because she at one point tells her publisher, Elaine still lives down there. And she's like, your books do so well in Colombia. So that is like a little Easter egg. And then the guy goes, Joan Wilder? Joan Wilder? And he comes out and he's like, you're my favorite author. And then he said, guys, those books I read to you every Sunday. This is Joan Wilder. Joan Wilder, come in.
It's so funny.
So he comes in. He has this huge, giant mansion house. Like inside, it's like this beautiful villa. There's like these music blaring. He has like a bar. He has like, it's just this beautiful place, and he is obsessed with her because he loves her books. So her books are these international romance novels that, and she is well known, and even Jack is like surprised by this, like, whoa, like I didn't know she was this famous. I don't even think she even knew she was that famous. So they say, he's trying to give them drinks and food, and they're like, no, like we just need to get to a town with a telephone, and we need a car to get there. And they told us you had a car, and he goes, a car? Oh, they must be talking about my little mule. And so in your mind, you're like, oh man, they thought the car, but he really just has a donkey, because you're like, oh, this is Colombia, third world. And at this time, that crazy Zulu guy with his police force have come and found Zolo, and are like ready to take over, like, and as they're like basically a SWAT team coming in, like trying to get them.
Pepe is the name of his car, right?
Yeah, yep. And then all of a sudden, this like giant truck with these huge wheels. What kind of car is that? It's
Ford
like
Bronco.
Oh, it was a Bronco, but
Sport
it was like
model.
Really tripped out. Comes flying out of these gates, and he's like, that's his little mule, he calls it, and he calls it Pepe. So there's this crazy car chase where the secret police are chasing after them, and they're being bounced all around this car. The guy's like a total crazy driver, but also like showing them parts of the village. He's like, look, my brother planted that tree. Like, look, that's the house where my mom was born. Like, he's so kooky, this guy. I love him. And they end up getting away because he had built this like bridge catapult thing over this river, and this river goes for like 250 miles. So there's no way that the guy can get over the river without this like big platform thing. So they're able to get away, and he leaves them off and leaves them off at the village to go make a phone call.
Yep. So now they're back in civilization. They get a hotel. Jack tells her to like wash up. He'll get them some clothes. Meanwhile, he goes and decides to make a copy of the map so that he can like have it for himself and find the treasure later, whatever. And then they have like this romantic night of dancing, and
it's like out of her books.
Yeah, it's out of her books. Everything's great. And then at this point he tells her
they do the deed.
Oh yeah, they have sex, but then he tries to start convincing her that like, I think we could actually help your sister if we like look for this treasure and get it, so that we have leverage when we go to get her. Otherwise they're just going to like kidnap you and, or like kill us or whatever, basically, which like probably true. Yeah, true. Valid. But she's like, She doesn't want to do that for some reason, but then changes her mind and decides to do it because now they're in love or whatever and had sex. So now they go on this treasure hunt. And so I think this is where I kind of petered off because I was like, oh, now we have to go on a treasure hunt? Like, we just spent all this time getting out of the jungle and now they're basically going back.
It was pretty easy. They didn't have to do too many steps.
True.
And they
just follow the map.
Yeah, they follow the map and they end up finding it going to this cave and there's something with like mother's milk or something and it's this like white milky pool in this cave and they dig through it and they find kind of a bunny statue wrapped up. And they're like, what kind of a trick is this? And then she's like, oh, well, in my last novel, like I had them hide the treasure in like an artifact or something like that. So he breaks it open and there's this beautiful green stone, probably like the size of a apple. You know, it's huge. I don't know, like it's an emerald or what, in the shape of a heart. So this is the corazon that they've been chasing.
The stone.
Yeah,
the stone.
And so they're like, yeah, we're going to be rich. So kind of side plot, the people who kidnapped her sister is this cousin duo. So it's this guy named Ira and like very wealthy, has a yacht, you know, has obviously all these different things that he steals or kills people for and then sells on the black market. And then his cousin, played by Danny DeVito. So Danny DeVito is following Joan Wilder around, and at one point, he kind of gets off of their trail, and he's kind of like the slapstick, kind of like bumbling guy, and stuff happens to him throughout the movie. But he finally does catch up with them, and he ends up holding them up and trying to get the gem from them in the cave. So he followed them to the cave, and he like holds them up and takes the stone from them. So then they all come out, and then he's going to take them back to Ira, his cousin, and then where her sister is. So then the secret police come at this point, and they're looking for the stone too. So then there's like this big chase, and then they end up with the stone again, and then they're in this car, and it falls into a river, and there's this like white water rapids. They go to a giant waterfall, somehow survive, but get split up and on each side of a riverbank, and Jack is on one with the stone and Joan is on the other with the map. So they decide to meet up at the city where her sister's being held. There's a hotel there, and they're going to meet up, and she thinks maybe now like that this was like his plan all along to get separated. He was going to take the stone and just leave her. So that whole beautiful night they had.
But he has the stone still?
Yeah, he's a stone, she's a map. So she goes to the hotel, and it's calling reception every couple minutes. Did Jack Colton check in? Did Jack call? And he hasn't checked in yet, so she's really bummed. I mean, she's feel like she's being ghosted, guys. I'll say it. Like, one night stand, ghosted, terrible. You know, this happened in the 80s too. And she feels terrible, but now has to switch priorities. Her sister's the priority. So she shows up at this kind of sketchy, like old abandoned, I don't even know what that was, fort or something. In the middle of the night, and comes with the map and is able to get her sister back. And they just decide to let them go, right?
Joan and her sister?
Yeah. They're like, here you go.
But then doesn't you find out that Jack was caught by Zolo? And
so then right as she's about to leave with her sister, these like guns go off, and Jack comes out of nowhere, and he's being held hostage by Zolo and his group. So they had caught up with him when he was at the hotel, and so everyone's kind of there all together. Now there's a crocodile aspect to this. So the guy Ira, so the part of the two cousins deal. No.
Zolo's keeping the crocodiles.
It wasn't Ira had the crocodiles?
No. Oh yeah, Ira had been keeping the crocodiles. Okay, sorry. Yes. Ira's been keeping the crocodiles
in this like fort where like they all have this little hideout, and they know Jack has the stone, so they are holding up Joan and are gonna hurt her. And so Jack finally decides to give up the stone. So he's like, "Here, take this," and he like throws the stone, and the Zolo guy reaches out to catch it right over the crocodile pit, and a crocodile jumps up and eats his hand with the stone in it.
Bites his arm off.
Super gory part out of nowhere.
Yeah.
This bloody stump is just like shooting blood out. The guy's going like, ah! Very unexpected. Though I did remember it from when I was little and was also traumatized then. And then everyone kind of like scatters. So the crocodile at this point has swallowed the stone. So that's not like of interest, I guess, to anybody except Jack, because he's the one who follows it. But then the guy, why does the guy go after Joan, though?
Because I'm like trying to read the synopsis. Joan and Elaine are pursued by Zolo until Joan, having stones and throws it at him. I don't know, just because he's mad and is like, you ruined everything.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So she's like he has a knife and she is trying to fend him off and she's calling like, Jack, Jack. Meanwhile, he's trying to get the crocodile or alligator who swallowed the stone out of the water and killing it so he can have the stone. Meanwhile, she's like almost dying. And so he like finally decides to save her instead of getting the stone out of the crocodile's belly and climbs up this wall. But she ends up saving herself. She's able to fend him off and like he ends up falling through this grate like into the big alligator pit and gets eaten. And saves herself, which ends up being sort of symbolic about the whole movie, that she didn't need a guy. Like all her books were revolved around this guy, like these very capable, strong women, but at the end had to be like saved by these dudes. And she kind of proved that wrong, where like she could save herself. So, her and Jack do part ways at the end.
He tells her to go to the American consulate, and then is like, I'm going after the croc, and then like dives in the water, and he's like, I don't want to like tangle with the police. I'm, into shady things. See you later. Dives into the water. That's it. The end, basically. No. But so then it cuts to like sometime later, I don't know, some amount of time. She's back in New York.
She's able to write another book.
Writes another book about her experience in Colombia. And then is walking to her apartment and sees this giant sailboat. So she sees this picture, or Jack had this picture of a sailboat and was always like, someday, like, I'm going to get that. I'm going to buy one of those and, like, sail around the world or something. It's like, that's his, like, dream. So that exact sailboat is sitting outside of her apartment. And she's like, Jack? And wouldn't you know it, Jack is here, guys, wearing crocodile skin boots because apparently he caught that croc, killed it, got the stone, bought a boat with the money that he made from that stone, and now they can live happily ever after. And the boat's name is Angelina, which is her character in the book, right?
Because he ended up reading her books and actually like really loving them, and really, really sweet. So like definitely textbook romance. Did they make it? I hope so.
Well, there's this whole like subplot of the fact that like he's supposed to be this like con man, and like that's the oldest trick in the book to like romance the woman and make them think that like an idea that you had is their idea, kind of like a Jedi mind trick kind of thing, and then you like take them for all they've got and just like cut them dry and ghost them basically. So you get a sense that like that maybe was his original plan, but I didn't really feel like that. Like I don't feel like they committed 100% to that. Like maybe it's because it's Michael Douglas and we're like, oh, it's Michael, he's nice. I don't know. Like I didn't buy it or something, like him as a con man. Like I always felt like he did like her. So I don't know. I was torn.
I think he was intrigued about her from the beginning, and only like as he learned more about her and spent more time with her, he realized even how much more he liked her. There's a sequel to this movie. I don't know if it's the same. What is the sequel about? Look that up. I think it's the same characters, but I do not find Michael Douglas hot in everyday life and really any other situation. But for some reason, I did find him hot in this, and seemed like a really fun guy when he can wield a gun, he can do all this, tough stuff. But then it was like that scene in the town where he's dressed in all white and his shirt is buttoned, like, exposing his chest, but he doesn't have any chest hair really. And he's like doing kind of salsa like ish kind of dancing with the villagers, and he dips her and they like kiss. Oh, I don't know. I felt very attracted
romantic
to him.
Yeah, that was definitely the highlight, was him in that white suit. All right, so oops plot summary. When Joan Wilder is abducted while on a trip along the Nile, her boyfriend Jack Colton and pal Ralph, excuse me, rush to rescue her and retrieve a fabled jewel. So another jewel is involved.
Who's pal Ralph?
Danny DeVito.
Whoa.
Why are they pals? I don't know. Interesting. So I guess they did make it. Okay, sorry. After 6 long months, 6 months is nothing. Chumchi of dreamlike sunsets, seductive cocktails, and endless travels around the globe on their yacht, Jack, Colton, and Joan Wilder are finally starting to get bored with each other, and their life's stagnant. So then she gets invited to this thing, decides to accept it, and then gets kidnapped. So he has to save her again, basically. Okay. Interesting.
Well, I hope she gets out of it herself.
Yeah.
What I just said would be
What'd
totally
she
down the
learn? Nothing?
toilet.
Yeah.
So yeah, Michael Douglas, hot, ? Okay, here's what I remembered from my viewings of this as a youth. The mudslide. Okay, the mudslide was great. I'm like, how did they film this? Also, like, how do they film crazy rain scenes like that? Do they wait for it to rain, or is that all
I think
movie
it's a water
magic?
machine. I think it's like a rain machine.
That's crazy. I remember probably if there was one memory from this movie, it's when he cuts off the heels of her shoes. So that's the line I said in the beginning. So she has these pumps on and he has a machete and it just takes her shoes and cuts off the heels and makes them flats. And that's when she says, those were Italian, now they're practical. I don't know, that just stuck with me my entire life, that scene.
I feel like, does that make sense though? Like, because like heels have a certain like arch to like the sole, right? So like if you cut off the heel, would they be functional? I don't know.
I think I'd rather just go barefoot.
I know, like just forget about it.
The Joan Wilder, the guy like obsessed with her, having read all the books, the drug dealer. I remember that part. And then I remember the crocodiles and the hand. I didn't remember the hand thing being so gory, but I remember like crocodiles were like a huge
It was like
part of
5
this.
minutes.
Yeah.
It was like 5 minute long scene of a crocodile biting his arm off.
When he's fighting with Joan, one of the ways she's able to like get him to get away from her is like stabs or hits the like stump. Ugh, and I just like am thinking how much that would hurt if someone like bothered your bloody stump.
Gross.
I don't know what it is about the stumps, but yikes. But yeah, my big question is Colombia really that muddy? And girl didn't own a pair of sneakers?
I just like this fascination with when you are traveling to like dress up and look good. Like I thought it was just like a thing in the 50s, but going back and thinking about movies in the 80s, I guess it's still carried over where like women would have like a travel outfit and like a matching hat and like all this shit. And it's like, okay, now it's just the opposite. It's like, how can I be as comfortable as possible in this tin can that I have to fly in for like 8 hours, right? Not to mention she's going to a fucking jungle or like Colombia. Very bizarre. And like, I know she doesn't get out a lot, but man, that was a tough one.
I don't think you would have like sneakers. There weren't necessarily like a casual sneak. You might have a gym like trainer or aerobic shoe, but you wouldn't be like traveling with your aerobic shoes, like you had like your heels and that was it.
Girl doesn't know how to pack. Yeah, it's too bad.
Oh,
too
like such a bummer.
bad.
Also, she had this. I mean, I don't think a rolly suitcase would have helped you in any way, but
I was going to say, I cannot believe there was a time in our lives when we had suitcases that you had to carry. Ugh. Like, that is insane to me. We were we had those suitcases when we were little. We had that Care Bear suitcase, the little red suitcase that you had. It was a thing.
Yep.
Like, can you imagine?
I mean, I don't understand why rolly suitcases weren't invented the same time as the car was. I mean, it's the same principle. Why can't you just stick wheels on anything?
I think people just weren't packing an excessive amount. Like probably that was it, right? Like we didn't have all this shit that we have.
Well, they certainly weren't charging for suitcases in the 80s. Like you could check a bag. Like no one was putting stuff in the overhead bins except a bag.
Right.
Like you would stuff would go under.
You can't fit a suitcase in.
Now when you travel, nobody checks bags because it costs like $50.
Yeah,
I mean, it
bullshit.
sucks.
Bullshit. Traveling changed quite a bit.
It really did. Okay. Do I have anything else? Sweetie, have you ever read a romance novel?
I think no, not a real one. I don't think. I think that like I am such a book snob that I can't get past the writing usually of romance. And I'm sure there are, especially now. I feel like they've they've changed. I don't think I've ever read like a bodice ripper. I got one out by accident at the library. I didn't know that it was like a romance novel, and it was so sexual, and I was just like embarrassed.
They're like Skinamax,
it's basically
right?
softcore porn, and it's like it's a trip. So. Did we want to pick one for book club?
Yeah,
once? And like I think that would be fun. But yeah, I guess I've never read one cover to cover.
Yeah, I haven't either, but I'm intrigued.
But yeah, I always did look at the covers at the grocery store though. When I was little, I was like, "Ew, look at this one."
I know, and I'm sure they're very formulaic, and that's not really my cup of tea. But yeah, I just want to like try one out and see how that goes. But yeah, this is a super cute movie. It's super fun, 80s. The soundtrack is Alan Silvestri does the soundtrack, who Robert Zemeckis uses all the time. But this is like heavy 80s soundtrack with like saxophone, keyboard.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It is not. Great.
It was not Forrest Gump.
No.
It was not Back to the Future. I'll tell you.
It was
like
terrible.
Alan.
Oh
is this
my
you?
god! I was like,
yeah.
oh, it just was so of the time. Like I just love it, and and I think, like I said, I think this movie, while it is supposed to be like a romance novel, like come to life in some ways, I think it has a good message in the sense and like that she was able to. Okay, so at the end of the movie, she says Jack's gonna come back for her, whatever, but she goes on and like lives her life. So she makes this new book. She drops it off at the publisher. The publisher's like crying, and she leaves her publishers, and you can see that she is just like a new woman in the sense that like she's had this adventure now. She sort of has found this love that she was searching for, but also she was like capable of doing stuff on her own. She proved to herself like, I can travel this foreign country. Like I don't speak the language. I don't know anybody. Like it was kind of a hot mess, and she ran into some trouble here and there, but she did it. So she's like wearing this cape. She's wearing her hair down. She might have just like a touch different, a little bit more makeup on, and she just is like a woman about town. There was these people always trying to sell stuff in the front of her building, and she was always kind of just like, oh no, like I don't want it, no thanks. But now she's just like brushing people aside, like out of my way, like in a nice way, but like I don't need you. And so
she's got confidence.
Yeah, she's got confidence. Exactly. So I kind of like
she's a confidence woman.
Yeah.
Woman.
Yeah. I kind of like
As
that.
he
And I
was
like
a
that
kind of man.
as the message that sometimes while like romance was part of it in this, it really was that she like stood on her own 2 feet and like convinced herself like she wasn't just a writer in her apartment like with her little tiny nips and not nipples, like the little alcohol bottles, and her cat. So,
yeah, and
I
they
like
don't
it.
show the cat anymore.
Yeah,
Cat seems to be. I'm sure
Sweetie's
he's still
convinced
around.
he's dead.
I'm not convinced he's dead, but like it was just like a message of like, look, ladies, when you leave the house and find a man, you don't need your cat anymore. And it's like, fuck you.
I mean, the last scene should have been, Jack, hello, welcome to my apartment. Come meet Romeo.
Come meet Romeo. Like we're all one big family. Like I just hated this like sense of like,
And he'd be like,
a
I'm allergic to cats.
Yeah, lonely woman with a cat. Like. Yeah, I have a cat, but like I'm not lonely. I'm just alone. Like there's a difference.
Yeah.
And so yeah, you know.
Yeah, I agree. That's the part.
But it was such a trope back then of like, how do we make a sad one? It's like the net, like Sandra Bullock, like all alone. Oh, I'm on online chatting. I have to order my pizza online. You know, like it's just like, man, look at this sad woman. Me. I don't know. It's just pissing me off. Piss me off, you guys. Whatever. But yeah, that's all I have to say. That's all I have to say about it.
I really liked it.
It was cute. I was just like, I'm just sick of the cat lady trope. Sick of it.
I know. Wish I could just have a gerbil or something. Flip it on its head.
Gerbil.
Some other pet, you know?
You hate mice. Why? I cannot
Why
picture
does
you
it
being
have
like,
to be
I
a
would
cat,
like a.
though?
Yeah, right.
Why
Why
can't it
does
be a
it?
ferret?
Why, or like a dog? Why
Yeah,
can't?
why
Why
can't it
are
be a dog?
dogs not given the same like
Because women
sad?
with dogs are not sad.
Why?
I know. That's what I hate about it.
Stupid.
That's what I hate about it. That's what I
God,
hate
I'm
about
still mad about it. I'm still mad about this, even though like we're really turning things around, and now guys have cats too, and you know we all love cats, so
it. Cat dude.
things are changing.
Are
But
cat dudes sad like cat ladies?
no, they're funny
They're
and
fun?
quirky.
Yeah.
Like it's like you know it's different, but whatever. Anyways, all right. Anything else? No. Cool. All right. Well, thank you for listening. You can find us on Instagram at Large Marge Santos. Thank you, as always, for listening.
Bye.
Bye.